No one had ever seen a picture about a pool player. It was character-driven, and it was pretty obvious.
When I first saw him, and I thought, oh, another Marlon Brando clone, I could tell by the Hustler, no, this guy's got something else.
Before, in Hollywood classical cinema, you sympathize with the people. Here, you are and you aren't. The anti-hero.
A lot of people say, oh, that was my favorite picture. And I thought, oh, you must be a pool player. So no, we really just love the movie.
You knew he was going to be a big star. All you have to do is look at his eyes and watch his performance.
It's a great feeling, boy. It's a real great feeling. When you're right, and you know you're right. Is your name Felsen? Eddie Felsen? That's right. I hear you've been looking for me. Yeah, that's right, too. Big John, do you think this boy is a hustler?
I was shooting a film in France, and I was actually set to do another film, and that film fell apart. And it was only because that fell apart that Rob Rawson sent me the script when I was in Paris. So I started to read this thing and was halfway through, and called my agent and said, I'm halfway through, it doesn't make any difference, fix it, make it happen. And but if the other film had come through, I never would have done The Hustler.
Newman was born in 1925, so he is 35 years old when he does this. And Paul Newman, in this period, begins to come into his own. He just won an Academy Award nomination. He was just rising now. So I think Rawson knew that. Rawson took that hunger, and that's what Fast Eddie is all about, too. He's hungry. He's hungry to make it. And he wanted Newman right away because he knew Newman's persona, what he stood for physically, what he looked like, and what he stood for personality-wise in film so far. That fit this character. It exacerbated the character, brought out the character to a T.
I did some research. There was a pool hall on 47th Street upstairs on the second floor. So the first day I got back, I went up there and just to sniff around. And this kid came over and said, how would you like to shoot a little pool? I said, no, I don't shoot. And he came back in about 15 minutes and he said, come on, we'll play a little game. We don't have to play for a lot. Shoot a little game of pool. I said, no, I really don't shoot. He came back to me about 20 minutes later and said, you're an actor, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, I seen you. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, you don't know me. What happens if I'm hustling you and I take you for your wad? He said, well, if you take me for my wad, he said, the guy behind the counter there, he said, he'll come over and play you. And I said, well, but what if I beat him? He says, the guy that takes the coats, he'll come over and play you. I said, well, what if I beat him? He says, you beat him, we call Chicago. So there's always a guy sitting around who's going to be better than you are. And that's all it takes to make a hustle.
Paul made a lot of strides in his pool playing.
I'm very quick to learn anything. I never got to be a good player. I got to be okay.
Cross court.
I remember we took the dining room table out of the dining room and put it pool table in. And Willie Moscone used to come up 3 days a week, something like that, for a couple, 3 weeks.
There was just something about his focus on the script and on what he was doing and the kind of relationship he seemed to have with the director. In other words, he wasn't a guy asking the kind of questions that a Brando clone would be asking, you know.
The first day or two, we just sat at a table and read. And those eyes were just, woo, just popping out at me, and I couldn't look, which is, I guess, what happens to most people.
Newman hardly spoke to you, not out of any snobbery or anything like that, but he was totally involved with what he was doing.
I found so many things about him unusual. We'd arrive at the makeup room in the morning, and Paul, he was always intensely reading the newspaper. And I thought, Oh, I've never seen an actor do that.
This is the character of Eddie Felsen. He's introvert, he's a loner, very self-absorbed. And take a look at this. He's so much alone in this. Although he's surrounded by people, he is positioned in the cinemascope space where he is alone, and it works beautifully. This is someone who is isolated. He's in a relationship with Sarah, but not in a relationship. That's what I mean by the isolation in the frame. That drew us into Newman. But at the same time, there were so many parts of his character that kept us away. The inability to connect with Sarah, to disconnect with Charlie, his surrogate father. There's so much that's so not nice about him.
What happens when the liquor and the money run out, Eddie? You told Charlie to lay down and die. Will you say that to me, too? What happens, Eddie?
Just find yourself another rich old lover.
That's right. And I'm sure you'll help me.
Other performers perform wonderfully when they have a leading man or someone with whom they're in a lot of scenes who is concentrated on them rather than himself.
I don't think he ever approached his work as a leading man, movie star.
He was professional about it. There was a lot of character-driven stuff in that. In fact, it was character-driven.
Charlie, well, you better give me that money. Come on, now, give it to me. It's mine. Okay. You're be a damn fool.
You see this young hustler who should know better being hustled himself by just the calm professionalism of Minnesota Fats. It was about the ability of character to overcome talent. Not that Fats wasn't a great player, but he had more character. He would go in and powder himself and wash up. And meanwhile, Eddie was drinking his way into losing. So it was an interesting character story.
What does he do, this Bert Gordon?
He's a gambler.
Is he a winner?
Well, he owns things.
Is that what makes a winner?
Well, what else does?
The picnic scene is an extraordinary scene in that he begins to talk about his talent. He's never done it and what it means to him. His art, his grace.
Like all of a sudden, I got oil in my arm. Pool cue's part of me. You know, it's pool cue. It's got nerves in it. It's a piece of wood. It's got nerves in it. Feel the roll of those balls. You don't have to look. You just know. You make shots that nobody's ever made before. And you play that game the way nobody's ever played it before.
He gives her at this picnic part of his soul. He does that.
There it is. I'm broke. Well, that's unfortunate, Mr. Felsen.
Sarah is the conscience of the piece. And in Louisville, before her suicide, she told Eddie the material success. It is not true. It is false. And to subscribe to this is self-destructive. You will lose your soul. You will lose your soul.
Doesn't all of this come through to you, Eddie? Doesn't any of this mean anything to you? That man, this place, the people. They wear masks, Eddie. And underneath the masks, they're perverted, twisted, crippled.
Shut up.
Don't wear a mask, Eddie. You don't have to. That's Turk, Eddie, the man who broke your thumbs. Well, he's not going to break your thumbs. He'll break your heart, your guts.
I mean, that's what her suicide is all about. Perverted, twisted, crippled. It's defeat on her part. And disgust with herself, self-destructive. But it's also at the same time showing him what is what. Look what Bert does. Look what he's done to me. She's allowed him to do it to her because she wants to show Eddie that he is evil. It's a victory, but it's a Pyrrhic victory. That scene of reaction in terms of Eddie to Sarah's suicide, that's all focused on Eddie. Although Bert is in the scene, Sarah's in the scene, but the whole center of the frame is Newman and his reaction. This is a very important, critical moment, and it's a very important thing to perform, this reaction to her suicide.
He went from having the core of his character to be about hustling to the core of his character that had to do with a sense of self-honesty and integrity. That's a nice road for a hustler to travel, incidentally.
And then you find in the end that there's a change. He confesses to Bert, of all people. Isn't that an irony?
I loved her, Bert. I traded her in on a pool game.
Too late. Pyrrhic victory. It's an incredible sequence. Incredible sequence. It's a testament to method acting, a new type of acting, the new realism on the American screen. It's one of his finest performances. And of course, this was his second Academy Award nomination.
Don't ever walk into a big-time pool hall again.
The character demanded another look, because when he went out, George Scott made it very clear he was never going to be welcome at any pool table. So, what happened to that guy?